happy to host you and Cenk and all these other guys too, because this is, as we say over here, fucking bullshit.
Can diplomacy survive when trust breaks down on every side? That's one of the biggest questions surrounding today's discussion. As tensions in the Middle East continue to evolve and debates over free speech spark controversy far beyond the region itself. In this conversation, you'll hear Piers and Megyn Kelly discuss the latest developments involving Iran-Israel ceasefire negotiations, President Trump's strategy, and the growing political fallout surrounding the conflict. The discussion also shifts to another controversial issue, reports that Cenk Uygur was prevented from traveling to the UK, raising broader questions about free expression, political criticism, and where governments should draw the line. As you watch, pay attention not only to the arguments being made, but also to the assumptions behind them. Which claims are supported with evidence? Which predictions are based on political judgment? And what do these disagreements reveal about today's geopolitical landscape? Do you think diplomacy still has a realistic path forward? Should governments restrict entry based on controversial political views, or should free speech protections be broader? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let's watch the discussion together, and afterward I'll share my thoughts on the key arguments that stood out. If you enjoy thoughtful political analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
In with Megyn Kelly, host of the Megyn Kelly Show, and the breaking news of Iran pulling out of ceasefire talks over Israel's escalating attacks on Lebanon. Megyn, great to see you.
You as well, Piers. What a news day.
Amazing news day. And literally, as we're about to start this chat, we've got this breaking news of Iran suspending talks with the US, now announcing they're moving to completely block the Strait of Hormuz again. And we know how damaging that has been to date for the global economy, never mind anything else. You know, you and I have talked about this war now since the start of it and expressed deep reservations about what it was supposed to be achieving and how it would be achieved and how long it would all take. Here we are, months into this, and it's going nowhere, isn't it?
Yeah. And Israel's gotten its way again, which is to queer the deal by bombing Lebanon over and over and over. I mean, the so-called ceasefire was meant to include Lebanon, and our side said that from the beginning. And the Pakistani mediator said that when he announced the ceasefire. Only Israel denied that that was part of the deal negotiated by us with Iran. And they began bombing Lebanon, already like messing up the ceasefire right from the get-go. And then they spoke to President Trump, and President Trump apparently ceded the argument to Bibi and allowed him to bomb Lebanon. And off we were to the races, where the ceasefire was never really all that ceasefire-y. And here they are bombing them yet again, as we reach this tentative deal where we say, okay, let's have no more bombing in the entire region. And what does Israel do? They start bombing them again. Now, in the interim, there's been bombs going Israel's way as well. So it's like, as with everything in the Middle East, it's hard to say like who started with whom and when. But there's been clarity from the beginning that Israel refuses to abide by our attempted promise to have it stop bombing Lebanon. And that's been a problem in putting this thing to rest from the beginning. And I don't see it letting up anytime soon. The Israelis are determined to do to Beirut what they did to Gaza. And no one seems inclined to stop them. We're really the only ones who can stop them. And we don't seem to have that as an agenda item. So our ceasefire is falling apart as our attempt to put an end on a wider basis to this war falls apart. And the real problem here is that the Iranians know we don't have any cards to play. We've done what we can do. And President Trump, to his credit, is not willing to sacrifice more American blood and treasure on this war, which was never ours to begin with, because he understands there's zero support back home for that. And therefore, we don't have the muscle to force Iran into doing anything, and they know it. They understand that we're in a weakened position and that we don't have any cards to play. You know, this standoff in the Strait is hurting President Trump. It's hurting the Iranians too. But we had calculated from the beginning that they would never play that card. They wouldn't seize the Strait. It would be too economically painful for them. And we underestimated how much pain they're willing to inflict on themselves in order to hurt us. And we're not barbarians here. We don't have an Iranian Revolutionary Guard running our country that doesn't really give two figs about its countrymen as they do. And we underestimated their capacity for self-pain. And now we're paying the price as we head the U.S. and the world into a potential national and then global recession as we head into a midterm election cycle that the president's party cannot afford to lose. We assume we're going to lose the House on Team GOP, but now more and more political pundits are predicting that the Republicans are going to lose the Senate as well. And the map doesn't get any easier for Republicans 2 years after these midterms when we go into 2028 with a presidential election and yet another election for House members and some Senate seats. So all the math is bad. We don't have the cards to play. It's already a quagmire. Yes, it's only 13 weeks or whatever it is, but it's already a quagmire because there's no easy solution left. Even if we just pack up our bags and leave, which is what we should do.
You know what? That's what I've been saying, is that take any kind of Pyrrhic victory you like, but get out of this, because there's not going to be some great total surrender, as Donald Trump talked about early on. There's not going to be a dismantling of the IRGC. They now know if they control the Strait of Hormuz, they basically can have the cards, right? And they know if they want to let off some rockets at their neighboring Gulf states, that will just intensify the pressure, which means that the military battle being waged by America and Israel with the bombardment and so on, yeah, fine, you can win that. But what you can't do is you can't stop the Iranians controlling the waterways, which are the waterways to the world's energy. Donald Trump has posted on Truth Social a little earlier, Iran really wants to make a deal. It will be a good one for USA and those that are with us. But don't the Democrats and various seemingly unpatriotic Republicans understand it's much tougher for me to do my job properly and negotiate when political hacks keep negatively chirping at levels never seen before over and over again that I should move faster or slower or go to war or not go to war or whatever. To sit back and relax, it will all work out well in the end. It always does, President Trump. Now, the problem with that is the person who's doing most of the chirping is President Trump, right, who is telling us in real time every day either there's about to be a great deal or he's about to wipe Iran off the face of the earth and so on and so on. Constant mixed messaging, very extremes either way. He is leading the agenda here himself. The chirping is coming from Donald Trump. And, my message to him back would be, don't worry what other people are saying about this. I would stop being so vocal on your social media feeds and try and work a way to extricate the United States from this before the damage becomes irreparable.
The only way to force the Iranians to give us what we want in Iran is with boots on the ground. And there is zero appetite for that here amongst the American people. Right. And especially because the war was never sold to us. It never had majority support. The reasoning for it has been all over the board. The first thing that was really said publicly was we did it for Israel. And then they realized that caused quite a backlash. So they tried to tell us that wasn't true, but it's all on tape from the House Speaker and the Secretary of State / National Security Advisor. And so there's never been majority support. And as things have gotten worse and stickier and weirder and harder, the support that was there is starting to dwindle. Even amongst Republicans now, there's less and less support. And President Trump knows that. For the first time that I've watched him in history, he's not attacking the polls as wrong or biased or unreliable, because it's all the polls from every single outlet that say he's underwater with every constituency. He's lost all the gains he made with Latinos. He's lost all the gains he made with black voters. He has lost the white working class. That is as core MAGA as you can get. Once you've lost them as President Donald Trump, you have no one left other than the boomer crowd watching Fox News. That's the only one still in his corner. And that's not enough. That's not enough to keep the Republicans in power in the House and the Senate. And if he loses both of those bodies going into this November, he's immediately a lame duck. And not just that, but he's facing 2 years of investigations of himself and his family and every executive order and every allegation of corruption that's been leveled against him and his family. I mean, he's really back to what was happening to him when he was out of power those 4 years. So the chirping, though, Piers, I mean, it's really amazing because the president was the chief critic of the wars that we had in Iraq and our involvement in the Middle East. And that's one of the reasons why he was elected president, for all the chirping he did, giving voice to those who are very skeptical of our wars over there. It's one of the reasons why he was elected. And now he's gone and done the very thing he promised us he wouldn't do without getting the majority support. And so, sure, he's got a lot of critics, not only on the left, but on the right too.
Yeah.
And he's not going to silence them by saying, stop criticizing me. That's not the way this works. No one supported this, and no one but the hardcore neocons wanted it. So you still have those guys sort of in your corner, sort of. They're starting to drift as you won't launch a ground war against Iran. And they're going to be gone from him in 2 seconds, Piers, if this deal is basically reopen the strait and here's $12 billion in your Iranian assets that we had under our control, which is what the deal is looking like. Yeah. That's what it's starting to look like, which just puts us back to square one, only Iran is a lot richer and has a new weapon, a geopolitical weapon, the strait, which it didn't know it had, with no progress on the nuclear front. Those people are going to abandon him in 2 seconds flat. But he's lost majority support with all the other key constituencies. So this wasn't worth it. And I think sober, honest analysis would show any fair-minded person that it wasn't.
I think
and
he
the question now is just cutting
Megyn,
the losses.
I think he knows. And I think that for all his support of Netanyahu publicly, I think he must be bitterly regretting believing the Netanyahu playbook for this, which was you decapitate the leadership, the IRGC collapse from within, the people rise up. It's going to be straightforward. None of that has happened apart from the initial decapitation, and the Ayatollah got replaced with his son, right? So nothing's really changed other than Iran now knows it has cards it didn't know it had. And that's kind of the worst scenario of all, where they've now gone, okay, great. Now, every time we shut the Strait of Hormuz, the entire world goes nuts, right? We've got everybody over a barrel, quite literally over a barrel of oil.
Well, and one other thing has changed, which is incredibly, we've gone from the Ayatollah to more radical leadership in Iran. I mean, it's unbelievable. We had a guy who at least had a fatwa on actually developing a nuclear weapon to a team of people who I think would be just fine doing that. And a guy who understood that they could potentially seize control of the Strait of Hormuz, but never actually did it because he understood that would be a next level move that would actually really upset the world economy and the Iranian economy. And now we have these guys who are just, forgive me, but it's just a bunch of bastards who are like, let's fight dirty. You know, this is existential for us. And they've done it. They've gone and done it. So we to the extent we have regime change, we've gone from radical to extremely radical. And a group of people that understands they don't have to bargain with us at all, that the pain we're withstanding is worse than the pain they're withstanding, and that we're likely to bend the knee before they are because they see the numbers over here that 70% of the American populace does not like this war. And it's up to in the 90s when you ask who is opposed to ground troops. So while Mark Levin would really like us to send boots on the ground over there and to have, I don't know how many aircraft carriers over in the Strait of Hormuz patrolling it forever. He's in a growingly small cabal. And President Trump, while he continues to tell us to watch Mark Levin's show, and Mark Levin defines who's MAGA and who's not, understands that that's a very small group, and that's not a group big enough to win elections.
Well, the other person who's gone very quiet is Ben Shapiro, our friend who loved to whack us for our supposed, terrible positions on all this. But he's gone very quiet because his own business is now getting seriously damaged in people running away from watching his show because they know the narrative he's been putting out there has been proven in front of our eyes to be incredibly unsuccessful and actually working out the exact opposite to how he assured us it would happen. On the issue of Israel and criticism, how concerned are you about booking any holiday or vacation anytime soon to the United Kingdom? Because Cenk Uygur, who, you would disagree with pretty much every word that comes out of his mouth, but he's a regular guest on my show. He's a very, very aggressive critic of the Israeli government. I've never heard him utter a word that I would construe to be anti-Semitic. I never sensed from him at all he hates Jewish people in any way at all. He just does not like what the Israeli government has been doing in the name of the Israeli people, and he doesn't like the hold the Israeli government appears to have had over the American government. And as a result of his comments, including on my show, overnight he was about to fly here to sit in my studio and do a debate with a big pro-Israeli guest, and instead they have revoked his visa. Now, the context of this is a few weeks ago they revoked a number of visas for people who were going to come to the Tommy Robinson March Some of them I was mystified by, I'll be honest, about why they had been banned and didn't like that or agree with it. Some I could see the merit. I think if you're espousing violence or you're obviously bigoted against a group of people based on their ethnicity or their religion, I think that's acceptable reasons to not let people into a country. But if you're not doing that, if all you're doing is criticising a government for the actions it's taken. I mean, I criticised the British government mercilessly over the Iraq War in 2003. Should I be banned from my own country? What do you feel about this? This whole area of free speech, who should be allowed to go where, what they should be allowed to say. You know, to me, if you're not espousing violence and you're not targeting a group based on ethnicity or religion or whatever it may be, but you're criticising a government, why is that not protected?
I mean, I think they should both be protected. Here in America, you're allowed to be a racist or a bigot or a transphobe. You know, I've been called all those things. You probably have too, unfairly and unjustly. But OK, that's fine. You're allowed to be those things. What's not allowed is making, for example, an employment decision based on those biases. But there's no law against having racist feelings or having transphobic feelings or having sexist feelings. People are complicated, Piers. And one person's definition of transphobe is another person's definition of standing up for women's rights. And, you know, you could go down the list of these terrible names and make the same argument. I mean, my feeling watching this from over here is we're about to celebrate our 250th anniversary of independence from Great Britain. And one of the reasons we broke away was because they were too overbearing on matters like this, and to the point where we felt the need to write it into our Constitution with our First Amendment that the government wasn't allowed to crack down on speech like this. They couldn't police opinions in this way. And it seems to me that the government of Great Britain is looking to create another one of those revolutions by the folks like you who are over there not wanting to live like this. These excesses are beyond. I mean, as I understand it, in the UK right now, you got a group of cops that let a young man die after being stabbed to death by some Sikh gentleman who they told him as he lay dying that he wasn't stabbed as he was bleeding out, and nothing's happened to those cops. But meanwhile, you've got the government and the police authorities over at Oxford shutting down a similar debate about Islam's role in the UK, and at the same time stopping Cenk Uygur and his nephew Hassan Piker from even coming into the country because of their criticisms of Israel. So basically, this entire debate, which is very relevant within the UK of all places, since it does have a growing Muslim population, and there are pockets where it's gotten extremely controversial, you're not allowed to talk about it. What the hell kind of solution is that? How are you going to solve anything if you're not allowed to talk about it? That's the very basis of starting to problem solve. So I think this is hypocritical. It's outrageous. And of all times to be doing it, as we over here are celebrating our independence from you guys, more and more of your folks, including some of the folks shut down by that Oxford Union, are going to come to America. I'm actually in the talks right now to help host this thing, Piers, and I'm happy to host you and Cenk and all these other guys too, because this is, as we say over here, fucking bullshit and needs to stop. The government should have absolutely no say over what the opinions are in your head, the opinions that you speak out of your mouth. What it should police is when you use those biases, if they exist, to actually hurt people physically or via employment, etc.
Just quickly, I know you're going to go, Megyn, but you mentioned the 250th. This whole row that's been breaking out over America's 250th birthday, the musical performances, supposedly celebrating it, a number of artists now dropping out, citing the event's affiliation with the White House. What do you feel about that? I mean, Trump's responded, as you'd expect, saying, cancel it on Truth Social, calling the performance overpriced and boring. Should it be cancelled? Are these people overreacting? Are they politicizing it themselves by pulling out? What's your view?
Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate. I think, you know, whoever booked them, if they didn't make perfectly clear exactly what they were being asked to do and why, failed and set the White House up for an embarrassment, because it's pretty foreseeable that anybody saying they're going to perform at a Trump event is going to get political blowback. But honestly, like, shame on them for not just being more clear. I think the real reason that they are canceling is not really that people said, oh, Trump is bad. I think the real reason is the reaction on the left and the right to the list of performers was, shall we say, disappointed. I mean, people were mocking it endlessly because with respect to these bans, it's like mostly a bunch of has-beens with a few exceptions. And so people kind of scoffed at it, and then suddenly nobody wanted to be associated with it because it lost all cool factor. And I think they blamed it on the Trump thing, which was disingenuous in my opinion. The sad thing is now what we have instead is Trump being like, it'll just be me giving a great speech. And it's like, all right. The Trump faithful love Trump and they'll be thrilled to hear Trump. We get it. But like the 250th is supposed to be about the country. We're supposed to be getting beyond core MAGA and everybody in their MAGA hat. It's supposed to be something about our United States of America. And this is becoming one of those just sort of like Trump rallies, which is fine for the party faithful, but not inspirational for the party, not unifying in any way. And I think kind of I'm feeling shame on those artists for not just taking the black eye. You said you'd do it just because people weren't impressed with the ultimate lineup. Shame on you. You should find out.
I agree.
As you and I both know, when somebody invites us someplace, we say, who else is going?
Yeah.
Who are the other speakers? You make sure in advance that you're comfortable with the people who are going to be around you. And I think, I don't use the P word, Piers, but these people are a bunch of P words for chickening out of showing up and
Hang on, which P word are you talking about?
Well, it has another word for it is cat.
I've got to say, my only disappointment today, Megyn, is we've been speaking for 20 minutes and you haven't yet congratulated me on my football team winning the Premier League, Arsenal. Would you like to?
Oh, yeah.
Would you like to correct this problem?
I don't know anything about it, but I celebrate from here the joyful pictures you post because this seems near and dear to your heart. And all I think when I see it is I wish I had a sports team I felt that way about. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And way to commit.
There was a moment when Declan Rice, the superstar player for Arsenal, in my eyes, ran over when he saw me at the trophy lifting ceremony, put his winner's medal over my neck in front of my three sons and said, "We did it, mate. We did it." And I turned to my sons and I said, "Guys, this is the greatest moment of my life, including your 3 births." And they looked at me and said, Dad, we get it. We feel exactly the same way.
Congratulations. You've had a rough year with the hip and all that, Piers, so you deserve this.
Well, I've gone from a broken hip to hip, hip, hooray. Megyn, lovely to talk to you. Thank you very much.
See you soon.
Who made the stronger case, and did this discussion reveal just how difficult these issues have become? Let me know your thoughts in the comments because there were several important themes worth unpacking. One of the strongest parts of this exchange was the focus on the practical challenges surrounding diplomacy. Rather than simply debating who is right or wrong, the discussion repeatedly returned to whether current strategies are actually producing the intended results. Questions were raised about military objectives, negotiations, public support, and the long-term consequences of prolonged conflict. Regardless of where viewers stand politically, those are legitimate questions that deserve careful consideration. Another major theme was domestic politics. The discussion explored how foreign policy decisions can quickly become political issues at home, particularly when public opinion begins to shift. Whether those political predictions ultimately prove accurate remains to be seen, but they highlight how international events often have significant consequences for leaders facing elections and public scrutiny. The conversation also broadened into the topic of free speech after reports involving Cenk Uygur's UK travel plans. This portion of the discussion moved beyond one individual and into a larger debate about democratic societies. How should governments balance national security concerns with protecting open political debate? At what point does restricting entry become justified, and when does it risk limiting legitimate political expression? These are complicated questions without easy answers, which is why they continue to generate strong opinions across the political spectrum. Perhaps the biggest takeaway is that today's geopolitical debates rarely fit into simple narratives. Every major decision carries trade-offs, unintended consequences, and competing priorities. Understanding those complexities is often more valuable than simply choosing a side. What did you think? Did the discussion change your perspective on the Middle East, diplomacy, or free speech? Which argument was the most persuasive, and which point did you disagree with the most? If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future discussions. Your support helps the channel continue bringing thoughtful commentary on the biggest political stories shaping the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.